Hey guys, thank you for joining me today for day 2 of Creep on June, hosted by Tracie Fox. So if you enjoy these videos, please do consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And I will also link to my Povember playlist in the video description. So if you're interested, you can see what I did for those prompts last year and hear me recite some of Edgar Allan Poe's poems. And the reason why I'm talking about Edgar Allan Poe is because Creep on June this year is Poe themed. So yesterday I ran through what I've come up with as a theme for this Poe inspired challenge. So if you missed that video, please do go back and see what I was chatting about and what Edgar got up to on day 1 of his holiday to England. And I have a Creep on June playlist, which I'll link in the description as well. So you can find all of the videos for this in one place. My videos, not all of the videos, all of my videos. So day 2. Fair river, in thy bright clear flow, thou art an emblem of the glow, for in my heart, as in thy stream, her image deeply lies. Today's quote comes from To the River, and this was not one of the ones that Priscilla over at Release a Crafting used for Povember, so although I'm familiar with the poem, as in I've read it, I haven't actually done any actual research into it, which, as I mentioned yesterday, I did for all of the Povember poems, which a lot of are being used in Creep on June. So I did do a little bit of research for today's make, and in essence, it's a very short poem, and it's a poem where Edgar basically compares a river to a woman's beauty. So following on from yesterday then, Edgar slept really well on the first night in the guest house. He vaguely remembers something tapping at his window as he was falling asleep, probably just a tree branch or something. He looks out the window and there is no tree outside his window. He shrugs and gets dressed for going outside. He also finishes unpacking his old brown leather suitcase, placing his leather-bound notebook and typewriter on the desk. He gently unwraps his quill and inkwell and places that next to his book. He gathers a stack of papers and piles those next to his typewriter. His pocket notebook and steel nib pen was already sat on his bedside cabinet from last night. There was barely space in his suitcase for his one extra pair of shoes and a couple of pairs of trousers and shirts after all of his stationery had to fit inside it. But Edgar was a man of very little clothing and cared not if there were some threadbare elbows and knees. He leaves his room and checks the big clock on the wall on the landing on his way to the stairs. It's 10 a.m. The maid is sweeping. She tells him that breakfast is already finished, but he can find something in the kitchen. Maybe some bread and jam and a pot of tea. Edgar thanks her and descends the stairs and goes straight outside. He has no time for breakfast and socialising. Although he remembers being the only guest in the house, he's sure there will likely be kitchen staff around and he has things to do. The day is grey and windy, but not overly so. Perfect, he thinks. This was exactly the weather he was looking for and why he travelled for 6 weeks on a cramped ship in a horrible bunk with a strange man who was always talking the most inane nonsense, and not even in a good way. But now he's here, and it's exactly what he wanted. Edgar walks along the beach for a couple of miles, and eventually he nears the forest he could see from the distance back at the house. The seashore bends off to the left, and after encountering some brackish water, he follows the estuary round to where it fully turns into a river. He follows the river for a short while until he comes to a bridge. By this point, the rapids have calmed and Edgar can see his own reflection in the water. He forgets about crossing the bridge and is enthralled by the water. Despite the grey day, the river is surprisingly bright, clear and crystal. He remembers a woman he once knew, whose eyes and soul resembled the crisp clearness of this river. He sits on the riverbank, sits and ponders for hours in a trance-like state. He comes out of his trance and absent-mindedly wonders where he would end up if he crossed the bridge and headed into the forest. It looks so dark in there. But then he realises it's also getting dark out here too. He must hurry back along the shore before the tide comes in. He arrives back to the familiar stretch of beach in front of the house just as the waves start lapping at his ankles. He needs to remember to take a note of the time when he gets in so that he makes sure he doesn't cut it this close again. He doesn't know any other way to go, and it would be a fine thing indeed to start getting lost in this new town The last thing he wants is to ask a stranger for directions and end up in some kind of conversation about banal topics that he has no interest in. His stomach grumbles. He can't remember the last time he ate or even drank anything. This isn't unusual though. Edgar has gone days and days without a morsel before, especially when he's in the midst of writing one of his stories or poems. He'll go and change his shoes and then risk heading to the kitchen to find something to eat. No one is around when he enters the house, not even the maid. He sees the clock on the wall. It's just after 7 p.m. He unlocks his door and is pleased to see the maid has made his bed and straightened out his things. There is a small table in the corner of the room, and as he lights the candles in his room, he notices there's some bread and a small pot of butter, another one of jam, and a steaming hot pot of tea with a china cup and saucer. And also, what's this? Oh, a gorgeous and welcome nip of Scotch whisky. He smells it and breathes in the peaty aroma. Well, this is a surprise, thinks Edgar, and a welcome one at that. She must have just left it before she finished cleaning. The sea air has made him feel quite sleepy, but he perseveres. He eats and drinks, and then he sits at the oak desk that sits in front of the window, gathers some papers and his typewriter, and he writes about the river, using his quill to make corrections and other notes in his notebook. He writes and writes and writes for hours and hours, and before long there are scrunched up bits of paper, scribbles, sketches and all sorts surrounding him. Some specifically about the river, some about memories of his lost love, and some images from the dreams he had last night. He starts to nod off in his chair, but then hears that tapping at the window again, which awakes him with a start. He opens his eyes and looks up at the window just as a flash of a wing flies away. So it was some kind of a bird then. Well, that's nothing to worry about. He doesn't know what time it is, but must be 3 or 4 in the morning. He heads over to his bed and falls into another deep slumber. So that's day 2 story. This is the make for day 2. So we've got this tag with a quote on it, just some writing space on the back, and his little notebook that he leaves by the side of the bed, which is held together with this old zip. Don't know if there were zips in the 1830s or whenever this is, but there's one now. Here's a tea bag from his pot of tea, and the leather-bound notebook that he has on the desk. And in here we've got just some scraps of paper. This is a Release the Crafting page from her Poe Digitals, and I've just done some stenciling on the stamping and stenciling on the back. Some coffee dyed paper, some avocado dyed paper, and just scrappy bits of notepads for Edgar to write in when he has ideas, when he wakes up from his dreams and he used to jot down something before it leaves his head, or when he has a final thought before night time. And then this is the river here that he gets to once he's gone past the estuary, and he walks and he sees this river, and just over here there's a bridge. And this is the candle that he's lit, that he's able to see when he's able to see his bread and butter in the corner. And that's just a lady that he thinks of when he's thinking of the river. And in here we've just got some collaged plain paper, and then he's released the crafting words. If you wish to forget anything on the spot, make a note that this thing is to be remembered. It's just a Poe quote. And we've got the big clock in the hallway, just a letter that Edgar's written, the doily from his cup of tea and some tea stain marks. This typewriter here, which is a rub-on, and it kind of went a bit funny there, but it's fine, it doesn't matter. And then in the background I just kind of scrawled with a brown fine liner pen to give the illusion of old worn out writing. I've just scrawled the entirety of the poem of At the River, and as I say, it's not very long, like it literally fitted in that space. And then number 2. Now, I don't have 30 of these things. I think it only goes up to about 6 or something, so I'll be changing out the number at some point. But that is day 2. So thank you for watching my video and hearing the day 2 story of Edgar's visit. And I hope you will return tomorrow. Please do subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you can be notified of when my next video arrives. But in the meantime, have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow for day 3 of Creep on June. Bye!